Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and in today's video I want to give you a couple of tips and tricks on how to manually fly an ILS. In order to understand the basics of navigating on the ILS, we quickly need to understand how exactly the ILS is made up. So the cones of the ILS are basically the upper and the lower edge of the glide slope and the left and the rightmost of the localizer. Now, your glide slope instrumentation on here is showing you plus minus 0.75 degrees, and your localizer is giving you plus minus 5 degrees on either side. However, with Boeing aircraft having an expanded localizer scale, which you can only use with the approach mode engaged, which is going to basically make the full display just one dot of deflection. Now, we need to understand that the localizer and the glide slope are basically coming out in a V shape, like that, from your airport. So the further out we are, the greater the deviation can be for a given needle deflection. In other words, if we had half a dot or 1 dot of deflection on the localizer right now at 20 miles out, then we would basically be much further away from the runway center line than if we had 1 dot of deflection at just 1 mile out. Alright, with that in mind, the further out from the airport we are, the stronger our corrections need to be. Also, in order to manually follow the ILS, you should have mastered the instrument scanning technique, which I've described in my previous video, which I'm going to link in the video description below, so do have a look at that as well. Now, you can manually, precisely fly an ILS all the way down to about 50 feet in a Boeing 737. In heavier aircraft like the A330, we generally decide on a little bit higher limit, and we say roughly 200 feet is the limit after which you should no longer be chasing the needles. Chasing the needles is a very important term over here. So how do you fly an ILS? Well, many flight simmers tend to just look at the localizer and the glide slope and just tend to steer into the indicated direction until they are back on the needle. That is prone to overshoot you. Don't do that. Rather, what you should do is to have a look at your pitch and take on the target pitch and power values. And if you deviate from the localizer or the glide slope, just correct slightly, for example by pitching up or down half a degree. Check the resultant vertical speed and compare it to what you should have. Remember the basic formula: on a 3-degree glide slope, at a speed, or your vertical speed should be about 5 times the ground speed. So if we were following a 3-degree glide slope right now with a ground speed of 200 knots, we should be doing 1000 feet a minute. That's about as easy as it gets. Alright, with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and disconnect all the automatics. That goes off. Flight director also goes off. And finally we can also put off the auto throttle. Like that. Alright, now we are fully manually. So what are we looking at? Well, first of all, constantly look down at the heading to check if the runway track matches the runway heading. And do remember that you should have dialed in the runway heading on your MCP up there. So that's the first important thing for you to check. When the runway track is aligned with the runway heading, or rather when your flight track is aligned with the runway heading, then you basically don't need to worry about the localizer. You're going to be dead on it. For the glide slope, let's talk about it now. The glide slope is just about coming in, and I'm starting to reduce my speed. Now, I am going to use my Honeycomb in order to manipulate my MCP over here and to set the speed box, so don't worry about that. We're waiting for our ILS to come in, and as soon as we are capturing the glide slope, we're going to start pitching down. Now, let's get out flaps 5, match the speed bug for the flap 5 speed, and here we go. So, the key now is to do small and smooth corrections, and basically to remember your target attitude. So, let's just level out at 3000 again. Now the glide slope's coming in. We're waiting until we're just about on the glide slope, like now. Now let's pitch down a little bit. Let's start with about 2 degrees of pitch. And now we just sit here and we're watching what's gonna happen. Compare your resultant vertical speed, 850 right now, versus 170 knots ground speed, so that is approximately spot on. Now we're descending a little bit quick. But the key is just to use your target pitch attitude. And when the pitch is right, then everything else is going to be right as well. Now, as you can see, it's quite easy to do this. Now we're getting a little bit on top, so I'm just pitching down a bit. Let's go level with the horizon, while also watching the vertical speed not to become excessive. And as you can see, we're getting back on the glide slope. Now I'm just pitching up a tiny bit again. And just freezing my pitch in position over here. And you can see we're frozen bang on the glide slope as well with this. Alright, now comes the most difficult of all disciplines, changing configuration. Let's go gear down, flaps 15. With the drag and the lift profile now changing, we need to adapt to that. So we need to adjust our pitch and anticipate what's going to happen. Also note that we are now going to slow down, so we need to pitch up a tiny bit in order to adjust our vertical speed for what we actually have. Remember that the closer we get, the smaller the corrections we do need to be. Alright, flaps 30. Here we go, decelerating to VREF plus 5. And a little bit of turbulence here, but basically you can see I'm just freezing my pitch in position. And that is how I'm flying it. Also note that now that I'm increasing my thrust, I need to apply a little bit more nose down input, and we're going through 1,000 feet and we're fully stabilized in here. The key is to have your airplane constantly trimmed out. So trim it out for the target speed, for the target pitch, with the target thrust. And when that is done, you only need to do very minor corrections like now in order to get back onto your glide slope. As I mentioned, do not chase that glide slope needle. Rather, when you're a little bit below it, just pitch up a tiny bit. Check your resultant vertical speed, and once you're back on it, just pitch down that little bit again. And as you can see, like that, we can very precisely follow the entire approach over here. Getting a little bit low now, so I'm pitching up a tiny bit. Again, not chasing the needle, but much rather I'm just doing some very slow and deliberate inputs over here in order to keep my airplane flying on where I want it to be. Alright, that's checked. So, slowly getting back onto the glide slope. Again, small corrections are key. Continue. Right, let's just keep going for the fun of it. Let's see how far we can get. Getting a little bit high, so I'm just pitching down a tiny bit. As I mentioned, this far down, we are not going to chase the needle. So we are fine like this.
50, 40, 30,
Alright,
20,
idle,
10.
flare, and we're down. Let's see where we are. Well, that looked pretty good, didn't it? Alright, so that is as easy as it is, hand flying an ILS, when you take note of these little tricks. So, again, to summarize, most important points over here. Be very gentle when you are doing corrections. Do them based on your pitch and not based on any needles. If you just follow the target pitch and disregard the exact closure rate to your glide slope or to your localizer, then flying an ILS manually is very, very easy. Also, always keep in mind to align your track line with the heading buck and make very sure that the heading buck is actually set to runway heading. That's one of the most basic mistakes you can make for tracking a localizer, that you don't have your runway track aligned with the heading buck or with an incorrect heading buck. Alright, that's as easy as it gets, manually flying an ILS approach. I do hope you liked this one. If you did find it interesting, do let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and then I see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, don't forget to like the video if you did indeed like it, and subscribe to the channel if you're up for more. If you really like what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and see you all again on the next one.